Hello, Julie here and welcome to my YouTube channel. I have recently visited my mother and she gave me a whole heap of tulle, coloured tulle, gold tulle, clear tulle, pink tulle, green tulle, every colour you can think of. So I thought that I would use those to create a couple, or well, 3 Christmas cards. So here are the 3 cards I've made. I hope you enjoy watching these cards come together. I'll start with this card. All of my card bases are cut from smooth white 240 GSM cardstock. They are all 5 inches square. I cut my card bases 10 inches by 5 inches and fold them in half at 5 inches. I've also cut a panel of white cardstock that is 4 3/4 inches square. I'm going to wrap that pink tulle around the 4 3/4 inch piece of cardstock. Now I tried a couple of different ways to do this. Firstly, I used double-sided tape, which was sort of successful but not successful enough, so I then went back with some liquid glue and put that around the edges and folded my tulle over onto that, and then put something heavy on it for a few minutes just to let that glue set. While I was waiting for that to dry, I got out my Heartfelt Creations sparkling poinsettia die and a piece of pattern paper from the Kaisercraft sparkling 6.5 inch paper pad, and I stamped the 4 layers of the poinsettia using Versamark Embossing ink onto that pattern paper. Then I used Superfine gold embossing powder to heat emboss all 4 flowers. I then fussy cut each one of those 4 layers using my spring activated scissors. I find these very handy for fussy cutting. I have arthritis and it helps with that. I am cutting right up next to the embossed line. I am not a big fan of the border around stamped images. Once all of the layers have been cut out, I used my flower shaping tool and an old stubby holder that I've cut open so it lays flat just for a bit of cushioning, and I turn the flower over and work my flower shaping tool into the back of it, just sort of pulling towards the centre so that each of those petals gets a little bit of shape. I do that for all 4 layers. To assemble my flower, my poinsettia, I use my liquid glue, put a little dab in the middle of each layer, then put the next smallest layer on top of it so that the petals are offset. Once I get all of the layers on top of each other, I put it back on top of my stubby holder and use my flower shaping tool to press down into the middle of the flower, and that helps lift those petals a little higher. I use liquid glue to attach my panel with the tulle on it to the front of my card base. I'm going to have a flick through the pattern papers to choose another pattern paper to go with this. I chose one that's got the foiling on it. It's a rose gold foiled spots. I cut that so, well, I think it was already 2.5 inches, so I left it at that, and I cut it so that it was 4 3/4 inches long. I also cut 2 pieces of black cardstock that were 3/4 inch wide by 4 3/4 inches long. I'm going to use my Versacolor black ink cube to ink around the edge of my pattern paper. I always like to ink around the edge of my pattern papers with this black ink cube. It just makes each layer stand out much better, I feel. I'm going to use my art glitter glue and attach those black strips of paper, cardstock, to the back of my pattern paper. I'm going to attach them so that about 1/4 of an inch of black shows at the top and the bottom of that pattern paper. I then use my liquid glue once again to attach that panel to the panel with the tulle on it. I'm using the liquid glue because I think it will stick better to the tulle than double-sided tape. Next I'm going to attach my poinsettia to that panel that we've just created, and I'm going to set it slightly off to the left. That will leave room on the right for my sentiment. I've chosen the sentiment from the collectibles pack. It's a rectangular piece of black cardstock with It's the Most Wonderful Time of the Year and a little Christmas tree in, and that's foiled with rose gold. I'm going to add a piece of quite thick chipboard to the back of that, and then I'm going to attach it to my card front. I'm going to attach it on the right hand side so that it just overlaps both the pattern paper and the tulle. The final touch is to add a few of these gold sequins. So I'm just going to scatter them down the left hand side of my card. I'll use my art glitter glue, just a little dab, and when that dries it's perfectly clear and flat, so you would not even see the glue if you did happen to get it in the wrong spot. Oh yes, and then because you can never have too much sparkle, I decided to add the pops of colour in the glittering champagne to the centre of the flower. I did this last, hoping that I would not smudge that, but later on I did. So that ended up being not in a nice little bubble like it shows here, but flattened. And that's our first card for today. Card number 2 uses some gold tulle that has like a little gold sequin embedded in it. I have cut a piece of white cardstock that is 4 inches by 5 inches, and this is going to be the panel that I cover with my tulle. I went straight for glue this time. I didn't worry with the double-sided tape. I found I liked the glue better and it stuck better. So I did the same trick. I ran the glue around the edge, folded the edge of the tulle over, and then put something heavy on top of it. In this case I used an acrylic stamping block. Because I managed to get glue everywhere, I used a silicone mat to place over the top of my panel before I put the acrylic block on top, because I didn't want the panel to stick to the block. While that was drying, I cut 2 pieces of gold cardstock 3/4 of an inch wide by 5 inches long. These are going to go at the top and bottom of my panel once again. I used my liquid glue to make sure that they would stay in place. It can be a bit tricky using liquid glue with mirror cards. I find that if I get onto it pretty quickly, if I do happen to smudge my glue onto my mirror card, if I get onto it pretty quickly with a baby wipe, it wipes away very cleanly and doesn't mark the card at all. Now I'm going to attach that panel to the front of my card. I'm going to leave a little, or about 1/4 of an inch or so at the top and the bottom. It fits right across the width. I'm going to apply a layer of the scrapbook.com clear double-sided adhesive sheet to some of that gold mirror card. This sheet is 8.5 inches by 11 inches, but you can get it in all different size paper, all different sizes. So yeah, I just buy this size because I can cut it up. So I'm going to attach that to the mirror card, and then I'm going to use that mirror card to die cut my focal points for this card. I like to use the double-sided adhesive sheets behind die cutting when it's a very fiddly die. It makes it much easier to attach it to my project. I cut 2 baubles using this memory box snowflake ornament die. So after I'd cut the baubles, I decided that I really liked the full bauble, so I didn't push all the little bits out Now I'm going to use some very fine gold thread, I suppose you'd call it, and my glitter glue, and attach some strings for the baubles to hang from. This first one is going to hang fairly low onto the card, and the second one will be a bit higher. I messed around with this, trying to get the glue to dry, holding it, messing around. I tried paper clips, everything, but in the end I just had to use my fingers and just hold it in place. And because I have decided to keep my bauble complete, I'm deciding to use the art glitter glue to attach it on top of the tulle instead of peeling the double-sided adhesive off. I feel that that's got more chance of sticking to the tulle. I used exactly the same process to attach the second bauble, but as I said, I attached this one slightly higher on the card front. The sentiment for this card came from my printed sheet of sentiments. I've trimmed it down to the size I want, and I'm going to mat it onto a piece of that gold mirror card. Then I'm going to use a piece of scrap chipboard behind that so that it's risen when I attach it to the front of my card. I'm going to attach it to the bottom right section of the card. So there we have card number 2. And so on to our third card for today. There's not as much tulle on this card, but the tulle that I did use is more of a white with a sort of a silvery speck to it. And it doesn't really stand out all that much, but the whole card is a lot more colourful. So I'm going to use the papers, as you can see, from the same sparkle pack. I'm going to cut my first pattern paper, this pale pink one, is going to be 4 3/4 inches square, and then the darker paper with the poinsettias on it is going to be 4 1/2 inches square. I'm also going to cut a pale panel. It's got some of the rose gold foiling on it. That's the panel that I'm going to cover with the tulle. So I'm going to cut that panel down so that it's 1 1/2 inches wide and 4 1/2 inches long. So this is the tulle I'm using. You can see it's a very neutral colour. It's got a bit of glimmer to it, but that's about all. You can see just by the ruler after the right there that I have used that same tulle to tie a little bow. Now I'm going to use the same method to attach the tulle to that 1 1/2 inch panel that I cut. While that's drying, I'm going to use my ink cube to ink around each of my pattern papers. Because there's no tulle on these pieces, I'm going to use my double-sided tape to attach them to my card front. When I use double-sided tape to attach my pattern papers, I don't use a full run. I use about 2 1/2, 3 inches on each corner, and I vary the directions that that tape is running in. So if I'm going across on one, I'll go down on the next corner. I'm going to add a piece of chipboard to the back of the panel that I put the tulle on. And before I attach that to my card front, I'm going to use a piece of this braid. That is another thing that my mother sent back with me, heaps and heaps of braids and laces. So I'm going to use a piece of this pretty little pink and silver braid, and I'm going to just tie that around my panel and have a knot. Then I'm going to attach my panel to my card front to the left-hand edge. So I'm going to leave about 3/4 inch from the edge of the card. I trimmed up the ends of my braid and used a paper clip to hold it in place with a little dab of glue behind it until it dries. Now I'm going to use my liquid glue to attach that little bow that I tied using the same tulle as I've used on the other panel. The sentiment once again came from the collectibles pack. It's a bauble shaped greeting, and it says, "Peace on earth will come to stay when we live Christmas every day." I'm inking around the edge of it, and I'm threading some of that tulle through the hole, and then I'm going to attach my little bauble onto a piece of chipboard and attach it at the top of that panel that has the tulle on it. And that finishes off my third card for today. I hope you've enjoyed watching my video, and if you have, I would love it if you would subscribe to my channel if you're not already a subscriber. I would also love it if you would like and comment. I answer all comments and I love reading your comments, so please feel free to leave one. Thank you for watching my video, and I hope you can join me for my next one.